There are only, like I said, three conceptions. There is the Abrahamic conception that all life is God's plan. There is a scientific perception or worldview that all life is coincidence. We are here by chance. It's a random chance of events that life actually happened, then we evolved, and so on and so forth. And then there is a third one, which is the Indic or the Dharmic, and all tribal religions and generally native civilizations around the world also fall into this framework. And this is that all life is conscious. Yeah, there's just consciousness, everything, all material things that we see in the universe, all manifestation is all consciousness. Please understand the distinction here from the God, the Abrahamic God. That God is Nirakar, but is not Nirguna. Yeah, that's important to understand. That has qualities. It shows mercy. That God, he or she, it, whatever, shows mercy, love, judgment, punishment. It is not quality-less. But this idea, Brahman, is Nirakar and Nirguna. It has no qualities, good or bad. And when it chooses to express itself in form, it becomes Sakar Brahman. Pursuit of science, pursuit of knowledge, education, health, everything is dominated by this worldview that we are all divine. Our presentation is on three conceptions of cosmos, of creation, creator. And ये important इसलिए है, and why is it connected with culture? Because finally in my worldview we have to choose how we want to live, conduct this life, and the behaviors and the beliefs and the behaviors that we live by. My assertion is that even if we do not have a specific belief system to live by and we do not integrate ideas, we end up defaulting into one of the three that I'm just going to talk about. So I'll tie all this together as I go along. This is a picture I took about 15-20 years ago at the Delhi railway station of this man. He had no legs. He has such a beautiful smile. I don't know how he managed all that. But here is the question that a lot of us grapple with. Why is he suffering? What is his fault? And this is a question we all have about our lives. When we suffer with disease, with broken relationships, whatever else, why am I suffering? What have I done to deserve what I'm facing? And my thesis is that there is only three ways of looking at this. Only three. It's a random chance. It's a chance event that this man was born disabled and severely disabled, that he has to wriggle at railway stations to live. And obviously I'm surprised that he still wants to live and still maintains that smile on his face. Or that there is something called God who punished him for I don't know what. And I'll come to why this God punishes. And the third is that it's because of his own karma. And he's sort of just bearing the consequences of his past lives. There is, in my worldview, or however much I've argued and asked people around, there isn't a fourth way of looking at things. The first one is the default setting that we all fall into when we say we are agnostics, I don't have a specific belief, or how can this be karma, or if we say that I'm an atheist, we all default into the first one, and I'll argue my case why. There are only, like I said, three conceptions. There is the Abrahamic conception that all life is God's plan. There is a scientific perception or worldview that all life is coincidence. We are here by chance. It's a random chance of events that life actually happened, then we evolved, and so on and so forth. And then there is a third one, which is the Indic or the Dharmic, and all tribal religions and generally native civilizations around the world also fall into this framework. I call it Indic specifically because we perhaps have the most mature documentation and evolved ideas around what this framework is. And this is that all life is conscious. Yeah, it's just consciousness, everything, all material things that we see in the universe, all manifestation is all consciousness. So let's go and understand the first part of it. Let's look at the first one, which is Abrahamic, in a little bit of detail. Everything is life's plan, just is God's plan. So God is the all-powerful ruler of the universe. Please understand, ruler of the universe. He is the almighty, the words that we use, almighty. He created the entire universe. He is formless, Nirakar, very common way of looking at this, Abrahamics, and some Indian religions and some people also look at a formless God because they say that deity worship or murti puja samajh mein nahi aati hai. So formless is fine. So the Abrahamic idea of God is also formless. All the good qualities he has, love, mercy, etc. But he judges and punishes human beings for deviating from the advice path. What is the advice path? Is to believe in him only. Okay, this is critical to understand, that the Abrahamic idea followed by Judaism, Christianity and Islam in that order is that this is the only God, and this is the only true version of God. And each one of them have their respective versions, and each one of them do not agree with the other two. And you have to believe in prophets who were sent by this God to get human beings to follow his advised path. There is a deviant counterpart called the Shaitan or the Satan, who's just completely out of control of this God. And then of course there is that Adam and Eve were produced magically, and then all human beings descended from their copulation. So we are all cousins, all of us. And Shaitan was responsible for Adam and Eve to deviate from the path of following God or Allah, because I think they ate the apple and there was the original sin and so on and so forth. The scripture, the Quran or the Bible, is the only and the final truth. And like I said earlier, that both of them do not agree with, both of them discredit the other as the final truth. So they are the sole truth owners, and all other religions and all other ideas of God, each one of them says that the other ideas of God are all false, and all other ideas of any deity worship or any scripture is also false. And so following anything like that would be deviation from the true path. And that there will be a judgment day, when everything will be will sort of vanish, all life will be taken away, the earth will be destroyed, and so on and so forth. And somehow, the bodies which are in graveyards will rise, and they will rise to heaven or hell. And that judgment day, they will split people according to the soul/bodies into heaven and hell permanently for eternity. Right now, they're all in waiting until the judgment day happens. Until then, the souls are all waiting in limbo. And all souls which do not accept the only true religion, according to each one of them, will end up in hell. That is a given. There is generally no argument about it. If you talk to some scholars and ask them this question up front, they will deviate, they will beat around the bush and so on and so forth. But this is generally the question, and I've asked this question to the 34th Archbishop of India in a public forum, and he squirmed and tried to evade the answer, but eventually he did agree that yes, this is theology, and in the 21st century we must relook at our value systems. That was his claim. I wrote a letter to him. That we'll all end 600 people sitting there. I asked him that will we all end up in hell? And yes was the answer basically. So the reward or punishment, it's important to understand, is for eternity. For our 80-90 year lives, it's eternal punishment or reward, until God or Allah chooses to redo this entire creation and say, okay, let me do it all over again. I'm not mocking anything, I'm just stating facts. Okay, there might be a little tone of mockery, but I try and restrain myself. Let's actually look at the scientific worldview for a little bit. The universe occurred out of a Big Bang. Why that happened, we do not know at this point. All sorts of gases emanating coalesced into galaxies, stars and planets. solar system, and Earth is one such example of one corner of the Milky Way galaxy where, the Earth was at the right distance and so on and so forth. But what happened, a Mars-like object banged into the Earth. This is early creations of solar system. It banged into the Earth and gave rise to the moon. That's how sort of the collapse happened. That's an imagination of scientists. This is the scientific worldview. And somehow, as from the collision, all the particles that went and started orbiting around the Earth coalesced once again into the moon. The Earth, of course, tilted at an axis. Now, the consequence of the Earth not tilting at an axis, which was before this event, would be that there would be extreme winter or extreme summer, and the equator would be frozen permanently or something like that, or there would be no seasons essentially on Earth. Had this collision event not happened, and had the Earth not tilted at an axis, and had the moon not been absolutely at the right distance from the Earth, just a separation. And here is this wonderful scientist who talks a lot about, just a 10% change in distance of Earth from the sun or of the moon from the Earth would have just not allowed life to happen at all. All atmosphere would have gone, there would be no water, and essentially there would be no life. All of this is called the Goldilocks zone, right? This is absolute, a million set of parameters that had to happen for life to evolve, happened coincidentally. That is essentially the scientific worldview. Okay, absolutely at the right distance, as I said, to allow Earth to cool, retain the atmosphere, hold water, and so on and so forth. And at the juncture of volcanic lava and seas emerged the first RNA DNA. Some scientists these days believe that RNA and DNA were delivered by asteroids on Earth. So which means they evolved somewhere else, but they evolved as the building particles of all life. Whether they evolved here or evolved somewhere else and got delivered, maybe semantics, but essentially that is how life evolved. But at that spot where volcanoes and seas met, the right conditions, the right warmth, all of that happened. This gave rise to the first single-cell organisms. They turned into multiple-cell organisms, evolution, and that's how all life that we see around us evolved. All suffering, all our diseases, everything is because of play of genes, which sort of evolved, and perhaps environmental factors. And so once again, it's a random chance of event that I was born to a certain parents who had a precondition to, diabetes or cancer and whatever else, and so I would have tendencies to have that. People born in wealth, poverty, disease, health is mere coincidence. In the God's plan, it is everything is God's plan. Bina Ishwar ki ichha ke ek patta bhi nahi hilta hai. Now that statement is problematic when you look at it from the Indic perspective. Bina Ishwar ki. You should replace the idea Ishwar with something else, God or Allah or something else. But Ishwar does not fit there, or Rab does not fit there. I'll tell you why. So in the scientific worldview, it's all a random chance of events, wealth, poverty, disease, whatever. And in Abrahamic, it's all planned by God. So I'll keep this and skip to all life is consciousness. That there is a source and it's just prevalent, it's consciousness. It's Chetan, it's called Brahman in Upanishads. The Shaivites call it Shiva, Vaishnavites would call it Vishnu, the seventh Vishnu or something like that. There are layers of Vishnu. Everybody has their own theory around it. Sankhya would call it Purusha and Prakriti, or some sort of dualism, and say that potentiality of all manifestation existed in the Prakriti, but only when it merged with the Purusha, which is consciousness, did life begin. That was the seed of beginning. And I will stand corrected because my Dharmic mentor Shankar Bhardwaj is sitting here, so he keeps correcting me whenever I'm wrong about anything. So, but essentially everything is consciousness, and everything, all that we see around emanated from here. This is all without form. without any qualities. Now, please understand the distinction here from the God, the Abrahamic God. That God is Nirakar, but is not Nirguna. Yeah, that's important to understand. That has qualities. It shows mercy. That God, he or she, it, whatever, shows mercy, shows love, judgment, punishment. It is not quality less. Quality does not mean good qualities by default. Quality means good, bad, whatever qualities. But this idea, Brahman, is Nirakar and Nirguna. It has no qualities, good or bad. And this is called Nirakar Brahman. And when it chooses to express itself in form, it becomes Sakar Brahman. Okay, that's when it gains qualities. That's when it has, we say Sat Chit Anand. These actually is manifestation of qualities, that it is truth, it is Chetna, and it is blissfulness. Blissfulness also is an expression of something, of a quality, of a feeling or something. So at this point, it's actually Sakar. It's at least, it's not Sakar, but it is Sagun. It is gaining qualities. And this is possibly when we call it Ishwara. Yeah, when the play of Purusha and Prakriti has started, the Shiva and Shakti has started, that is when we can call it Ishwara. And you understand the distinction? So that is Ishwara. Brahman is different from Ishwara. Now, if you say Ishwara is the creator God, like the Abrahamic idea of God, then yes, there can be potentially an equation equating between the two. Except that there is no judgment. I'll go on and talk about this. So from this primordial Ishvara emerges the Sato, Rajo, Tamo gunas, the three gunas. From them emerge the five primordial elements: earth, water, air, water, fire. And they're not necessarily how we understand air, water, earth, fire as we see it. They are tattvas. Also, I don't understand exactly what tattva means, but we'll leave that. All of the universe is made from some sort of combination of these five elements. All animate, humans, animal, plants, and inanimate things inanimate as we call them, the sun, galaxies, rocks, everything emerges from this consciousness. It is also a belief that we are not the only sentient beings. It's not only human beings who are sentient in these bodies. There might be a possibility, and it's okay to believe that there might be other non-physical sentient beings out there who we cannot see in 3 dimensions, and so on and so forth. It's not a hard thing to believe. If we could emerge, there could be other life forms which we can't see that could emerge as well. These non-sentient human beings also have a life. They have a beginning and an end. We call them devatas or ganas or gandharvas or whatever else, but they have a life and death as well. They have likes and dislikes just as we do. We can appease them and please them by offering them things to help us conduct our lives. That's why we do worship of devatas. That's exactly what I explained here, that for achieving our desires, for removing our suffering, we can appease them, right? And they perhaps have more access to better things of life than we do. Or we suffer from, say, for example, our karmas, and I'll come to that a little bit. During the process of creation, the law of karma was put in place. The Guru Granth Sahib talks of hukam. Hukam looks like order, which makes it sounds like the Abrahamic God was given an order. That's not true. The hukam there is rita. Rhythm. Rhythm is just the natural order of things. It's the order of the universe. It's the laws which have set the universe in motion, like the law of karma. That is hukam or rhythm in Sanskrit. Human beings, there are souls which emanate, individuated souls which emanate. By the way, why did Purusha and Prakriti come together? There was Ichha, the first desire, to experience itself. Who am I? And so experience in all damn possibilities. And that gave rise to endless individuated beings who took form like all of us. And then we go through birth and death cycles endlessly till we say, okay, I've had enough. And we go on the path of nivritti. We say enough is enough, ab aur nahi, acha bura kuch nahi jhelna. That is the path of nivritti. Otherwise, we keep on this endless cycle of birth and death. And as we go through that cycle, we collect experiences and collect, I don't know, proclivities, likes, dislikes, things unmet and met. And we just keep aggregating that memory on this, if you like, the soul body. Okay, of the being is the easy term. You just keep aggregating that over lifetimes. And that aggregates into what is called sanchit karma. And each life is prarabdha. One slice of that is what we are born with one body, with this body. This God or Ishwara, even if it's a creator God, does not judge human beings. My view is that it has no interest in us or suffering or happiness or whatever. It's like, I keep quoting this in Avatar, Jake Sully, before the war, if you've seen Avatar, before the war with the people from Earth, he goes to the mother tree and connects with does a sahelu and whatever, and talks to the mother that we need help, we are going to be decimated, we don't have the same weapons as these Earth guys do. And his girlfriend, I forget her name, Niteri, somebody, she comes and tells him that the Great Mother does not take sides. We're all part of creation, all life, so it doesn't take sides. So, but in the end, the mother does start taking sides and animals go against earth beings and whatever. But that I thought was very, very profound, and that is my view, that why do things not work? When we say, "Arey, maine itni puja kari, phir bhi kuch nahi mil raha, kuch fayda nahi hai." It is, why would the divine have any? You have your own karma. You're just bearing the fruit or whatever of it. Yes, you can keep appeasing the deities, and maybe somebody will come to help. But that is up to your own bhakti and whatever. We do have heaven and hell, but they are temporary holding places. They are not there for eternity first. And they're temporary holding places, and not like burning in oil and whatever else. Perhaps not even as ISKCON tries to project. But they're probably just remembrances of who we are, and it's immaterial probably for us. Human beings have the potential to realize their true self, their true nature, which is that aham brahmasmi, which I am that, and I am divine. I actually just 2-3 months back had a conversation with the Chief Imam of 5.5 lakh Imams all over India at the Saryu's office, Sangam Talks' office. And he came with the idea to convince me that Ishwar and Allah are the same. Unfortunately, I think I was able to challenge him enough with that idea. So that conversation is online, must see. That's exactly why I'm trying to call these things out, and I'll tell you why this is important. So, sort of coming back, that I am divine, and I'm not born in sin. I'm born as divine, and that's the fundamental. I do have this audio visual. I hope it will play.
You're having fun. Let me get to some of your quotes that are out in the press. The one where you say there is no God, or at least that's what primary headlines sort of read. There is no God. Could you expand on that? Are you saying that there is no God outside of creation per se?
Certainly, I'm saying that there is no creator. Creation itself is enough unto itself. It needs no outside agency to create it. The moment you accept an outside agency to create it, you fall into a vicious circle. Because the reasoning is that how existence can be there without being created by someone. That is the reasoning of all the religions. If you accept their reasoning, then the question arises, who created the God? And if God can be there without being created, then what is the problem? Then existence can be there without being created. You accept principally that something can be there without being created. So why unnecessarily go from A to B, from B to C? And those are all hypotheses. God A creates God B creates God C. Unnecessarily. The whole theology is simply nonsense. It begins with God. Theo means God. And logic means logic about God. That is a contradiction in terms.
So creation itself then is God. We are God. You're God. I'm God. Everybody here is God.
If you want to use the word God
or source,
there is no problem. There is no problem for me.
I'm very familiar with it.
But you will have to change the meaning, because the donkey will be the God, even the Yankee will be the God. Better drop that word, because that word is dangerous. Then sometimes you are riding on a donkey, you are riding on a God. Sometimes you are...
I guess the force that gives us life, or whatever it is, the energy.
I would like to call it pure consciousness, just consciousness. Or if you are too much attached with the word God, then call it godliness, but don't make it a noun, make it a quality. Godliness is perfectly okay.
Just going to pause this here. Yeah. So even the donkey can be God, or the Yankee can be the God. Why are these three, and that is the crux of the presentation of why I wanted to bring this up. Because these three ideas, these three belief systems give rise to some values and behaviors. And let's examine them. All beliefs give rise to values and behaviors. All beliefs. Generally, that is the framework. And so let's examine what beliefs, what Abrahamic beliefs, what sort of values and behaviors do they give rise to. My religion is the only true one. I'm just summarizing the beliefs here once again. All by birth qualities are a test by gods. It splits the world into believers and non-believers. Unquestioned submission to the scripture. The scientific worldview is that we are here by accident. It's actually, and the process of creation, everything falling into place is called the stochastic processes. All by birth inequalities are accidents, or perhaps genes because of evolution. This is the only life. You only live once. Very, very essential to understand. And that we have biochemical bodies, and that we are biochemical beings. The Indic worldview is that all life is divine. We have multiple lifetimes. All suffering arises out of our own karma, our own doing. And truth can be found through multiple paths, and so on and so forth. Abrahamic, let's examine some outcomes that we get. There is a lot of backwardness that happens, and we experience this. The outcomes in society we experience. There is no scientific temper that gets developed in most Abrahamic, or you could argue that, but Western civilization is Christian. But it's actually not Christian. It actually deviated from the path of Christianity and took to the enlightened movement, and so it broke away from Abrahamic ideas of Christianity, if you like. But Islamic societies, there's a professor, Edward Dutton. He's actually done research in all Islamic societies around the world, including in places which are non-Muslim dominated, but they have large sections, such as India and other places. There is a 20-point difference in IQ across communities between Muslims and everyone else. And that's largely environmental factors, because you just do not develop any scientific temper. So I'm not just making an assertion which is out of hatred or Islamophobia or whatever else. Women are an easy target. We see this all around us in Afghanistan, within India, all sorts of places. There's a missionary zeal, absolute missionary zeal, to convert everybody into their own idea of religion, of their own faith. This has happened in Africa. Africa has been split largely into two, and that is why all the wars, countries within Africa are split into two, Islam and Christianity, and wherever there is a boundary between them, they're permanently at war. And there is obviously intolerance ingrained in this for the non-believer. So much so that this idea that all non-believers are going to hell, it's so ingrained that Gandhi had to be posthumously baptized by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in 1996, because they could not accept Gandhi ending up in hell, who they evangelize and talk about so much. Now, this idea is very problematic because, Gandhi is one, but what about Ambedkar? And I actually asked the Maulvi this, and they get stumped with this question. I actually asked the 34th Archbishop this, did Gandhi end up in hell, or is Guru Nanak or Swami Vivekananda or Ramakrishna Paramahansa, are they burning in hell? They do not like anybody asking them this question. And you can ask them this question in a very civil manner, but that is the theology. And it's inevitable that this theology ends up, if you teach it to children, they end up hating you or want to convert you and so on and so forth. Exactly how they want to convert Gandhi, even after his death. So the scientific worldview, because we are here by accident, it's all genes and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of materialism because you live only once. So there's materialism, consumerism. There is a reductionist form of medicine. Purpose of man is economic value, and I want to come to a chart after this on knowledge, which I built with Shankar's help here. The purpose of man, let me reassert, is economic value. Yeah, that is the fundamentals of economics as it started. There is all wokeism about everybody must be equal, and societies are unequal, human beings are unequal, is because they had a different starting point, they were entitled and privileged, and all of this goes on. And all of this is coming from a place that, everything must be equal because everything is random. And unfortunately, it is not so. That is not how life works. But this keeps going against the idea of, reality. You keep fighting reality and you keep losing, but you keep blaming and creating chaos in the world. So there is scientific fervor, absolutely, no taking away from that, but there's also scientific arrogance. It's like Scott M. Peck, one of the world's most renowned psychiatrists. He actually has a full chapter in his book called The Arrogance of Science, where he talks about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So beautiful book, Road Less Traveled. Scientific worldview also gives rise to ideas like this that Elon Musk is after, where he wants to colonize Mars. Because of consumerism and materialism, it is inevitably the consequence that we are going to destroy the earth. Yeah, that's the consumerist mindset, that this scientific value system, the behavior that it perpetuates. It actually says that consciousness is an emergent property of the interaction of the brain between body and environment. So consciousness arises out of the brain, is a function of neurons firing. This is the scientific worldview, which now is being challenged completely aggressively and just being thrown to the dust by the quantum side of quantum physics, quantum mechanics, where they're saying that, once again, consciousness is the base and all-pervading idea, and brain is simply a tool for that. So man is an economic unit, is the principle of modern economics. Knowledge, thereby, is a utility for getting an economic output, and all economic output is the only indicator of success of human beings. And that is why we offer standardized education. Ken Robinson, in his very famous TED Talk, talks about the hierarchy of knowledge. Mathematics, sciences at the top, accounting, commerce second, third is something else, and absolute fourth is arts, like absolute neglected dances and arts and so on and so forth. Yeah, so I've written that actually, STEM, economics, social sciences and arts. So they offer standardized knowledge, and the lowest grade flunkies go in the arts. Some of them succeed and come at conferences and talk to us about how great arts are. The rest are doomed to a life of failure and lack of money and so on and so forth. And there is unhappiness, mediocrity, broken families, low TFR. All of these are consequences of this. And I'll come to the counter side of what an Indic worldview perpetuates. Coming to the Indic value systems and the behaviors it perpetuates. Truth-seeking and knowledge. India has always been a truth-seeking and knowledge-seeking civilization. It's not a coincidence that we gave rise to the numerals. Zero is famous, but negative numbers, when the idea of negative numbers reached Arabia, they couldn't understand. When it reached Europe, they thought that was black magic and things like that. We think that divine is experienceable, through our own beings. And because there is no dogma, because there can be multiple paths, so there are naturally debates. There is a holistic worldview to disease, which is Ayurveda, and there is a self-imposed morality of karma. कुछ बुरा हो रहा है तो अपने कर्म से बुरा हो रहा होगा. Of course, we have fallen. We have fallen from grace, if you like. We are a mediocre civilization. But all I'm here talking about is not how great we are, but the values and behaviors what the Indian system perpetuates. Whether we are following this or no is a totally different matter. So, just want to come back and sort of summarize a little bit of this. The behaviors that come out of Indic value systems is, for example, sacredness of all life, animism, ancestor and deity worship, acceptance, over tolerance, by the way, acceptance. Pluralism is natural to all Indian faiths. And this spiritual worldview guides all aspects of our lives. Pursuit of science, pursuit of knowledge, education, health, everything is dominated by this worldview that we are all divine. And, in that order, there is so many gunas, panchatattvas, and whatever else. And we have complete epistemology of all sorts of areas of work, Ayurveda or mathematics, everywhere. And this is what gives it that shape. The Kumbh actually was testimony to this. However we self-log ourselves to how bad we are and whatever. And a lot of Westerners would agree on this, and they have publicly agreed. You cannot get 50 crore, actually it was 62 crores eventually, people in an area which is 4,000 hectares for 40 days without a single case of plunder, rape, murder, nothing. There was only one incident of stampede in which 12 people or 20 people or whatever number died. That was also because of police neglect, and there was some constrained path. It started raining and something like that happened. This is unheard of. And this can only happen in a society which has a self-moral of how we want to behave. And that is half the population of India, by the way. However much we want to mock and self-log ourselves. There is, like I said, the emerging new side of science, which is questioning, that consciousness is an emergent property of the brain. It's actually saying, is the brain the organ of the mind? So brain is a tool that we are using to understand that we have a mind while we are in a body. You getting it? And there is Professor Michael Ignore, there is now Federico Fagin, there's a whole lot of people from neuroscience, physics, people who've built neural networks. They're all coming out and speaking about consciousness as the essential element. They're talking about consciousness, they give a fancy term called quantum fields, for example. So what would education look like if we followed the Indic worldview? Jivatma is divine. Each person, each Jivatma has unique abilities and interests based on their past, the collection of their past memories of multiple lifetimes. They have unique abilities and unique interests in this body. And because man is divine, everything is divine, knowledge is also divine. And happiness is the indicator versus economic output is being the indicator. Here, happiness is the indicator. Excellence is the indicator for success. And so you customize education. You do not standardize education. You customize education to the needs of the person. And which means that we would have to come into 1:10, 1:15 people, student ratios. And that's exactly what we were following. If you look at 1700 and 1800 records of British documentation of how we were running our schools in the 1800s in Bengal, in Tamil Nadu, in Odisha, Gujarat, everywhere.
Even in a university like Nalanda,
Yeah,
Takshila, with this
with same student ratio. And happiness and excellence and wealth as a byproduct, that would be emergent out of it. And that is why ये जो हम अपने आप को सोने की चिड़िया और ये सब बोलते थे, this is exactly what we followed, and we were the richest civilization, the richest country in the world. You all might know Angus Madison's data, we controlled 35% of the world's GDP until 180 and so on and so forth. I will put that chart for the next talks. So why am I saying all this? Why we are messed up civilization at this point in time? We just do not have the quality of life of the West, for example, and so on and so forth. So my assertion is, or my thought process is that we have to choose our worldview simply because we have to choose how we want to live and conduct our lives here. If you do not have a chosen worldview, I do not want to think about this, I'm an agnostic, I'm an atheist, and what by default you fall into the you only live once, which is the scientific worldview. By default. Because there is no other. I mean, do you believe that there is a God who's done this, or we are consciousness? Those are the only other two things. Because you reject those two by saying either I'm an agnostic, I don't want to think about this, why does it matter? So by default you end up saying that, okay, I live only once, let me enjoy life, everything, and all of that. If you believe in karma, you live only once for obviously cannot exist. If you have any belief in God, Ishwara, or any forms, Rab, Vaheguru, past lives and karma by default come into action. So you can't pick and choose. I believe this, but I don't believe this. It's not full theory, if you like. You live a mishmashed life otherwise. And so choosing the worldview is important because I think it gives an integrated view of how we want to live, how we want to experience suffering, and then how we want to conduct ourselves and perhaps prepare ourselves for this life and perhaps the next and so on and so forth. But I want to obviously clarify, no one living knows which is the absolute truth, right? Nobody. People who've experienced Ramana Maharishi or anybody who've experienced this can state their experience of the truth. But since we do not have the experience, we can only believe them. Because in this land, multiple people in sequence, in generation after generation, have said the same truth. You tend to believe that hundreds of these saints have said the same thing, they've had similar experiences, so you tend to believe them. But because we do not have that experience, so the point is not to believe, but the point is to choose your theory about why am I here. If you do not do this, you by default land up, like I said, in YOLO, and then there are consequences and behaviors that you will emerge out of it. If I've made sense, I don't know. So choose what works. It's not important whether it is the truth or no, but because we have to live a story. So you choose the story that you want to live well. That is really why I sort of wanted to make this presentation, because these choices lead to our values, they give rise to behaviors and outcomes. And of course, I want to close this by saying all religions are not equal. So, and they don't deliver the same outcomes. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah. Why did you speak about Charvaka?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. It's materialism.
No, Charvaka. It is not equivalent to materialism that I feel. Okay,
Maybe it is, but it is, I mean,
that's a debatable.
yeah, it just falls into, I wouldn't call it, it is scientific, at the same time it is lokayat, do whatever you like, have sex, have wine.
No, that is not the
The
true.
Ajivika. That is Charvak. That is
Everyone
Charvaks.
is bound their own perception of everything what they think about. For
Yeah.
example, your relationship with
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
I feel God is a very personal matter for everyone. I feel no.
Okay.
Your relationship with your God is your only.
Mm.
No one else can interfere
Sure.
or cannot. Right?
Sure.
Charvaka, so in Hinduism, or as you were saying, Indic philosophy, the person who's atheist are Charvakas. That's the and the only person that so
Yeah.
no we can see if we are having a
So what's the question?
My
Why didn't I
my
say
question is-
Charvak?
yeah, why did
Separately,
you
because that is materialism. That is absolute materialism, denial of any existence of any divine deity, nothing.
basically the
And basically saying that this is the only life, enjoy.
perception only your
It is,
perception is
yes,
the right.
it is, yes. And it is enjoy your life, have sex, have wine, all of that. That's Charvak. But of course, please understand, Charvak made rules of engagement of society. So much so that I read somewhere that Chanakya first taught Chandragupta Charvak philosophy, or how to administer a kingdom, and then took him to spirituality. Yeah, so it's extremely important.
Starting off,
Of course, but spiritually, if you look at Charvaks, they are no different from the scientific
I agree.
worldview.
I agree completely
Yeah.
with this.
I think as a teenager in today's world, you're just exposed to information overload. So many different perspectives, and while I was brought up in a very Indic household, so a lot of the values that you just mentioned about Indic philosophy is something I have grown up hearing. But then, as I'm older, and your talk also got me thinking that if everything that a human experiences is because of their own past karma, then what do we decide to do with? So when it comes to governing a country, when it comes to interfering in wars, solving economic inequalities, how much power do we actually even have, or what do we even focus on? Because then you will see that the people experiencing, the worser ends of society, if you can say, that is their own karma, that is their baggage to deal with.
So
But
basically,
you can't go into
why go interfere with it? Na?
Yeah.
So,
question.
yeah, very, very good question. Very, very good question for a 12th class 12 student. Okay, I may not have the Bhagavad Gita answer, but I have a Conversations with God, a book called Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh, an answer from that. So this person asks, supposedly God, that why should I give money to beggars? Okay. They are probably ripping me off, they're probably wealthy and whatever else. Okay. The answer is that please choose who you want to be. Do you want to be giving, or do you want to be having all this logic and whatever and not giving? All right. So we have proclivities, correct? We have tendencies to do things. Okay. If you're a giving person, but because of endlessly your contraptions and conflicts and discussions and debates in your own mind, if you're behaving out of your own tendencies, that perhaps is, I don't know, is going to create conflicts in your life. So choose who you are in context of whether, in context of a person whose suffering you might be wanting to relieve or remove. Please understand, going back to Bhagavad Gita, and I'm not the scholar here, I don't know if Shankar is still here, he's not. In not taking action, you're also taking action. Yes, so you'll have to take action, that is the thing of life. You have to create karma. There is no choice but to create karma. So you just choose what karma you want to create for yourself, how you want to live, So make that choice and act according to your own swadharma, according to your proclivities, your tendencies. You use big terms like swadharma, but I just call it my tendencies. So you just align your tendencies, align your actions to your own tendencies, and life becomes more graceful. I don't know if that answers her question.
I have a follow-up question. Would it be that, our own culture and religion helps us to, put aside things that are real, brings acceptance to where we are and moves us into an action mode faster because of the nature of defining it as karma? Are we accepting the reality faster and moving into action faster? Like if there is a situation, you're finding somebody who is having
Instead of fighting reality.
Instead of fighting reality.
Absolutely,
Right?
that could be. One gentleman who's a Advaita scholar actually was telling me, incidentally at IHC only a few months back, that karma is actually not a rita, is not a law of karma put into action. It is a social construct according to Advaita. Ooh, I didn't understand that at all. But imagine that. He's actually saying even that is not, it's just a social a social construct for us to conduct our lives. So eventually all we are doing is that there are broadly 3 ways of living life. You just have to choose what works better for you. If the scientific worldview works better for you, great, by all means live by it. But it has its values, it has its behaviors, there are consequences and outcomes that it delivers. We just have to construct all this in our minds and choose what works. The Indic worldview may not be truth at all. There may be no God at all. There is maybe not Ishwara, no Vaheguru, nobody else out there. Maybe the gurus are all hallucinating. I don't know. Yeah, but we just have to choose. So,
Rahul, a question here. So the Indic system is totally incompatible with what you call the scientific system, which is equal to the capitalist system that we're living in right now.
The classical. So science is actually, I should evolve this presentation a little bit. This science is now split into 2 parts, classical and quantum.
Correct.
That split has happened.
Yeah, but even in the quantum part, as long as our ecosystems, our economic systems are capitalist in orientation, there can never be an Indic worldview that goes along with the capitalist system. They are inherently not going to work because you need your patents, you need your the money part to work. Everything has to be monetized. In the Indic worldview, everything does not have to be monetized. So at the end of this whole system, it's not for us to choose also. It is also for the environment and the collective karma of the land to choose which system we will eventually live by. I want to live by Indic, but it's not available to me because I live in a capitalist world and it's incompatible.
Yeah, because we lost. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a friend of mine who says, well, we got colonized. Okay, then our fault. We got lost. We lost the battles. And yes, there are other reasons behind it and whatever. But I mean, eventually that is why we do all these things, so that we can slowly also prevail, right? And maybe influence other systems. I don't know how to replace patents, and maybe they become somehow part of what is called the Indic capitalist worldview, or no. I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe we keep it out as knowledge cannot be patented or something. I don't know all that.
This whole civilization is a mistake made by God.
Has
nobody ever argued this? Especially in the Abrahamic view,
yeah,
God is the creator.
Yeah.
This entire thing is a mistake.
No,
I do.
the thing in the Bible is you're born a sinner, right?
Yes.
In effect.
So everything is a mistake. I don't follow actually.
I mean, somebody who looks at the world today
Yes.
would always say, was it meant to be? I mean,
With all the wars and the...
all the suffering around.
In the Abrahamic worldview is inherently paradoxical. Yeah, we talk only about benevolence of God. So I'll tell you an example. I'm sorry, I'll say this on recording, but so one lady just last week met me, and she's doing some excellent work in Mewat area, and I won't go into details. And she actually told me that all my work is because of Kali. and she's helping me conduct and this work and take this good work forward and all of that. So, I'm just taking her as an excuse, but we say all sorts of people say these kind of things all the time, right? All the good work is being done by some deity, by the Devi or Shiva or somebody. So all the bad work was done by who? By human beings. And all the cleanup is being done by the deities. That is just doesn't make sense to me. Honestly, at this point, it doesn't make sense to me. Maybe there is a dharmic answer to this, but it doesn't make sense. I believe that it's just the divine has no interest in your health, wealth. It has a set of rules rolled into motion. Yes, there are deities possibly who, if you appease and whatever, can ease your life and all of that. That I do not disbelieve that. Yeah, you pray to a deity and maybe your karmas can be cut or smoothened and some grace enters your life and you live a little smoothly and whatever else. That may be possible. But to say that only benevolence belongs to God and all the bad things I don't understand this at all.
The whole Sanatan Dharma is around prayer.
Yeah. Prayer to
rituals for atonement, rituals for
yes, but also to deities.
Yeah, they are to deities.
And different levels of deities.
They are too.
And for perhaps cutting off some karmic ideas or something. Also, I'm not a scholar, so maybe there are better ideas around this. I'm not against prayer. I pray myself because finally you just turn to. I also tend to look at it like frequency. So you do sadhana to tune into the universe, and then maybe your deepmost desires can actually start manifesting.
Yeah.
So that is what prayer does. It just changes your frequency in your body.
See, my thing with this whole thing of the third view is that if you start believing completely into the law of karma and consciousness and not Ishwara and not prayer and not Sanatan Dharma, then all we are doing is we are again kind of...
I am saying Ishwara. There is...
You are, but you're not emphasizing on it. You're basically saying...
But I'm saying that all benevolence cannot be attributed to Ishwara and all bad things attributed to human.
My thing is then it's as good as...
So, for example, I have never been able to sort of understand that, there is a theory that at least Sri Aurobindo, or was it the mother who said this, that the British came in to relieve India, something like that. She was sent by the mother. They were sent by the mother.
Mm-hmm.
I can't take that. I can't understand that. They were actually pretty horrible. And had the British not come in, the Marathas were ruling India pretty much. So perhaps we would have had a different destiny or something, right? But also, why would the divine create a mess and then go and clean up the mess? That doesn't, I don't get it. I've not been able to get an answer from as many conversations I've had.
Okay, my own belief is that, divinity is within us. So even when we believe that it cleans, it's the goodness in us that helps us clean. We could be bad at sometimes, we can be good at sometimes. But I think it's the divinity in us.
Yes, so we are tuning into a Ganesha to clear our own paths.
And not all people can understand the divinity in them when explained, right? An abstract conversation is very difficult. Storytelling and visualization is a very powerful part of our culture.
Yes.
And without a story, it can't be a mass culture.
Agree with you.
So the divinity and forms that are there are all human forms. You have to remember,
anthropomorphic
they are
forms.
For you to visualize when you pray that you are Ganesha, you are Krishna, you are Parvati, you are Shiva. It's not outside. So
yes.
I think the cultural reason for divinity and idols is far greater than just what they place it to be. It's a very psychological
at mass level. It's a mass way of getting people to raise their energies so that they can get benefit out of whatever they want to seek. So anyways, I guess thank you for listening.